Hey guys, we're having a look today at this very interesting knife from Microtech, and it's a collaboration with Strider Knives. This is called the DOC. The DOC standing for Death on Contact. That's right, so this is a pretty aggressive, pretty highly stylized folding knife. Very, very high quality, without a doubt, very, very well put together. Certainly a matter of taste is going to be the main objective here in acquiring one of these. It's going to be because you saw it and you loved it, and this is just the thing that you like. Me, not so much. So I'm going to have to be a bit more objective with this and just talk about things I like about it, the things I don't like about it, and just the stuff that you probably need to know. The Microtech Death on Contact. So let's get into some size comparisons first. I'll place that in the middle there. Let's look at it next to a Spyderco Delica. There we are. You see it's quite a large knife. Let's look at it next to a standard Swiss Army knife. This is my Swiss Army Explorer. I use this knife all the time to clear my Lansky strop of gunk. So it's a large knife. Let's look at it against some other larger knives. So next to the Spidey Chef. Still a bit larger than the Spidey Chef. The American Lawman. What do I have that's larger than this knife? Let's have a look. Can my old mate, the Police 4, give it a run for its money? Yes, it can. So what you have here is a sort of frame lock, and it's almost like a sub-frame lock, as in like the handle seems to be made of titanium or aluminium, and then the stainless steel frame leaf is attached under the scales there, and comes out sort of as a separate bit of the handle here. It's got a lock bar protector or lock bar sort of stabilizer there that also stops it from, what do you call it? I always forget what this is called. It's it's like a piece of extra steel that sits against the back of the knife, the tang of the knife, to make it so lock stick doesn't happen as much. So it's a flipper knife, as you can tell by the pretty prominent flipper tab there. It's quite a pocket pecker, if I do say so myself. And yeah, it's obviously locks up, it has good action, has a big heavy blade. Actually has some pretty decent things that you can say about this knife, whether it is a matter of your taste or someone else's. So let's get to it. So one thing I do love is the blade shape. So the blade shape reminds me it's not too dissimilar from, say, my Manix. My Manix 2. Manix 2 is obviously a little less jazzy, but it's a really practical sort of leaf-shaped blade that has a really good constant, it's got a really nice constant belly, so it's pretty much constantly curving, but then you've got a flat enough portion here that you can use for your sort of push cuts and whatnot. So a really well-shaped blade. It's got a nice long drop point, so it makes for quite an acute little tip. And yeah, despite the busyness all over it, it's actually quite a practical cutter. And really, it's a compound grind, but it doesn't particularly affect the thickness behind the edge, except for this point right here. There is a tiny bit of extra height there, just where those two grinds meet, but otherwise not too different from one another, as in making for a noticeable difference whilst using it. So I do really, really like the blade shape, and once again I do like the blade material. This is an Elmax. Elmax is an excellent steel. It's a little bit like S35VN, but slightly longer in edge retention, or a little bit like M390, but slightly lesser in edge retention. Highly stainless, highly tough, a really good choice for any pocket knife, provided it is heat treated correctly. And some spoilers on my edge testing I did in this knife. It is heat treated correctly. I'll be publishing that tomorrow, so keep a lookout for that. So right now on it is a 20-degree Lansky polished edge, and yeah, it did obviously very, very well. So the steel in this one is done right. Moving down the knife, you've got pretty sound overall construction, and you know what, definitely a stylistically challenging knife, which is good. Not every knife should look like the Spyderco Police. That's a pretty standard looking knife. Or the American Lawman, it's a pretty standard looking knife. You know what? It's nice to have things that are different. Even though they're not for me, it's nice when people who do like the different stuff get their little taste in amongst things as well. So really, really cool. Really well done. The lockup and the action are all pretty good. It's not too ginormous in the pocket, so it's you know, about the size of like a Mannix, just a little bit longer. So it's not huge. It's not quite like a Medford knife or anything enormous like that. But then I guess I'm probably tempering my comments more into just the things you need to know pile. So things you need to know about the Microtech DOC. First of all, if you are a disassembler, it does have custom hardware. This was sent to me by my buddy Jeff. Jeff, I'm not sure if he has the custom stuff at home, but it didn't come with it. He just sent it to me in like a Kaiser pouch. So yeah, if you're a disassembler, the custom hardware is probably going to get on your goat a little bit. And this here, especially on the pivot, in fact, I'd probably almost call this something I don't like about it, because I often do like to adjust my pivots. So yeah, a little bit of a bummer there. Another thing is I'm really not a big fan of like stylistic stuff apart. I don't like this big orb-like blade stopper there. It's not a thumb stud, it is just a big old blade stop. And yeah, it just doesn't do it for me, like properly doesn't do it for me. The rest of the stuff, like all this business, these, you know, this stuff I can manage, but yeah, that's just kind of sits like, it looks like a big wart to me. But yeah, so that really doesn't do it for me in particular. Another thing you probably should know about the knife is that it's quite, you know, it's got these cutouts here that are quite rough and therefore kind of quite happy to grab onto grime and dirt and gunk and stuff for you. How much you'll actually use a knife like this if you pay this much for it is probably debatable, whether you are actually going to fill these with gunk from using it at your job site or whatever, but still something that you should know. Another thing you should know is this is quite a pricey knife. I'm just going to look up some prices for it now, but last I saw they were in about the $600 range, so stand by. So actually, I'm wrong. They're about 500 Australian dollars. So in America, you pay from between $350 to $380, depending on finish and whatnot. So you know, it's a 500 Australian dollar knife. So still probably the most expensive knife I've got at the moment, and yeah, probably just under a Sebenza and how much it would cost to get one out here as well. So that's a fair bit to pay for something. But then again, often with the niche knives, you're probably going to be happy to pay it if this actually scratches that desire that you've had for a knife. Another thing is the pocket clip. It's okay, but it's really, really shallow carry. So, you know, again, how much you're actually going to carry and use this knife rather than just collect it, I'm not sure. But yeah, it is quite a shallow carry knife, as you'll see from the pictures that are coming up of me shallow carrying it. So that's just something to know as well. But yeah, so those are the things you need to know. I'll just go into what I don't like as much about the knife, like the things that I actually kind of would see as flaws in it, and then we'll move on to my final thoughts. Alright, so firstly, I'm not sure if this is my fat finger, but this forward finger choil is just on the wrong size and shape for me. So when I take it into a normal grip, this really does poke into my finger, and I can't quite, unless I hold it back here, but I prefer to get a fuller grip. And this is just how my hand sits on it, so that might be a little issue for you if you've got sort of the fatter fingers. If I hold back here, it's not as bad, but it's still just the way my hand falls on it isn't quite right. The rest of the knife, quite ergonomic. Quite like Strider does good handles. This is a Strider handle with the heavy back here. Does really good, but yeah, the finger choil, not so great. That I've already brought up, not the biggest fan of that at all. The main thing though is that it's a flipper knife, but it's got the zero tolerance 0-450 thing where if you have any pressure applied to this here, the detent ball will stop the knife from opening. So right now I'm really cranking down on it, and it's only because I'm resting my finger across there, which happens quite naturally. So you have to think of backing your finger off onto the aluminium, and then it'll flip open for you just fine. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things. This is, I guess, sort of sold as what, a martial knife or as a fighting knife kind of thing. If you're in a panic trying to get this open because someone was, you know, causing you to need a knife in self-defense, I think that is just the type of thing you'd be doing probably. Why isn't my knife opening? So when people are trying to shoot guns and they've got the safety on, it's a bit like that still. So it flips absolutely wonderfully, but yeah, the lock bar and the detent have that thing going on where, you know, some knives have it, some knives don't. See my Spidey Chef, I can put all the pressure I want on there and it'll open up just fine, like it's not even tight. But it is often a frame lock flipper thing where I guess you just need that detent perfect for flipping, but yeah, very, very sensitive to any sort of pressure here. So it does have a fair bit of that. So I guess that's probably the main thing that is, for the whole time I've been sort of like playing with this, it's been bugging me a bit. So that plus the choil issue for me are probably the things that I would say I actually don't like about the knife. And yeah, moving more towards my final thoughts. Look, a lot of this is going to be down to taste. Like if you are happy to have a knife that's called the DOC, Death on Contact, with, you know, a four kinds of grind on the blade, big blade stopper, custom hardware, you know, if you're happy to have a knife that pretty much looks like this, well, this is a really well-made one, and it's got good materials, and it's made by people who've been making these sorts of knives for a long, long time, and I don't think it's going to let you down in any way. Just be mindful of the lock bar issue. That was enough for me to get rid of my 0450, because it was just, I just wasn't learning. I wasn't developing the muscle memory. Maybe if you had this for a long, long time, you would develop that muscle memory to alter your grip, but if you're a knife guy, you probably have all sorts of flipper knives, and lots of them won't need that micro adjustment. So it's just kind of that whether you'd ever get used to it or not, I'm not sure. And I'd love to hear if you have one of these that has this, if you've got used to it or not, or if you're just used to changing your grip on the blade, or because I usually just kind of grab the knife as normal and then flip open. But to flip, you sort of need to. It's hard to not put pressure down with these two fingers here. So yeah, just that's probably the main thing that's kind of like a hold up. You must know this, but otherwise, it's going to do you just fine. If this is sort of something that says to you that is the coolest looking knife I've ever seen, then yeah, pick one up. Just know about that. Be aware that maybe this won't fit your finger quite well. That's always the risk when you do things like this. It's obviously got a bit of a lean to it, so it isn't just your standard forward finger choil that's like your very basic police one here that it's so shallow that anyone's finger goes into it. It is or even the American Lawman here. That's quite a basic finger choil. The blade isn't as high up, so yeah, it's just a little bit less complex, making for much more pleasing to more grips. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the DOC. Great materials, great construction, well-made knife, controversial looking and named and all that sort of business, and big, all that stuff going on with it. But yeah, I can certainly give it the seal of improvement that it's seal of approval that it is well made. Alright dudes, not my forte reviewing strange knives like this, so hopefully I did okay. I'll catch you in the next one dudes. See ya.